Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the NOLA Theater Talk Show. My name is Alan Smason, and again, we broadcast on our various internet media that we have, the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group, which we created for this, the theatercriticism.com Facebook page, and my own YouTube channel. Again, tonight we want to thank you for attending. We have a very busy show and only a half an hour or so to get it all in, so let's get started. First off, I would like very much to tell everybody, if you're not associated yet with this show, we normally do theater, but tonight we're going to be concentrating on a form of theater, which I think is probably the highest level of theater out there, which is opera. People ask me what's my favorite music. I always say opera. And because it's so involved with the orchestra, with the set designs, with the costuming, and of course the voice, all of that has to come into play. And again, we are very privileged tonight to have the new general and artistic director of the New Orleans Opera, Lila Palmer, with us. She'll be here shortly. That's a picture that they sent out from the Opera Association early on. And of course, Lila, in just a few seconds, will be in the room. We also have Christoper Tidmore, who will be in, who will be person who's handling a lot of the marketing, etc. Of course, Lila takes over from Claire Burovac, who was on for 3 years. And of course, prior to that, the eminent Robert Lyle, who, of course, passed away this past year. And we know, of course, his presence was powerful, and he will be missed. There he is, of course, with Carol Rush, the chorus master, a picture I took some time ago. So, again, let's bring our general and artistic director, Lila Palmer, into the room. Lila, you come to us by way of New York City, but your history goes a little bit further back than that, doesn't it?
Yes, and Alan, thank you so much for having me on. It's lovely to be here. So I was probably longest in New York, but I had been recently in Toronto, before that in Chicago, before that in London. So, you know, the life of a kind of opera creative is very migratory, shall we say. So this is the latest in a line of cities, and the most unusual and unique that I've ever had the good fortune to live in.
And of course, you do my heart well, because you are a librettist, and any kind of writer I'm appreciative of, because I know we get overworked and underpaid quite a bit.
I couldn't possibly comment on that, but yes, I am an opera creative, and I write the books and lyrics for new operas, which makes me a librettist, which, for your listeners that don't know, comes from the Italian for little book, libretto. So I'm a librettist. I write little books.
See. Well, right, let me bring in Christoper now. Christoper, thank you for being with us again. We are talking about the Opera Association. This is called City of Opera. Really, New Orleans was the first city of opera in the North America, whatever you want to call it. The fact is that I believe they had one opera in America, North and South, that may have been premiered prior down in South America, but as far as North America goes, we have the designation for the first, and I think it goes back to 1794. Is that right?
1796.
Something like
that. And actually, it was one of the gifts of the Saint-Domingue immigration into New Orleans that started a lot of our cultural impact. And we bring forth, we not only introduced opera to what became the United States, this was before the United States, but basically most of the great operas, North America, that would come from Europe, premiered in New Orleans over the next century.
Yes. And we're going to talk about one of those that premiered in New Orleans a little bit later on for the season for November. But for right now, Lila, welcome again to New Orleans. I know you're going to be bringing a whole new aspect to the job that your predecessors, perhaps never did have some insights into, because, I know that Claire had worked a lot with different forms of opera, et cetera, but from the standpoint of your being a librettist and also being somebody who mounted a lot of works in New York, London, et cetera, you also, I noticed that you work with Mark Adamo, or you're working on a project with him. Is that correct?
Yeah, we just finished, actually. It was our first collaboration, and I will confess that he is a dear friend in life and work. He actually gave me away at my COVID. But go ahead, sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I'm going to plant a little seed. Now, I don't know whether or not this will take root, but let's just see. Mark is, of course, married to the eminent composer John Corigliano.
Yes.
For the 100th anniversary of the Metropolitan Opera in New York, there was a piece that he did called The Ghost of Versailles. I want to bring that to New Orleans. I want to see it. I don't think it's ever been here.
You and me both, Alan. That's like one of my big goals. Like, I don't know how you just picked that out of my brain, but that's
I'm going to tell you,
things I'm desperate to do.
I love opera. I want to see it. I will pay money to do that, and I don't mean just for a ticket. So let's see what we can do. All right, Christopher, you got that?
Yes,
all right.
I'm writing it down. All right. If I would try to make it a separate note, except Lila has actually brought up that idea to me no less than about 5 times. So the two of you are in the same wavelength. So
well, we you know, great minds think alike. All right, let's get started.
But yes, Mark and I do have a show premiering a very short film opera in October. So that was our first collaboration. But carry on.
That's fantastic. And we'll promote that. If you will, let me know about it. You know, if we can do it on Stepping Out, we'll do that as well. So Puccini called it his dirty little opera, right? That was Tosca. And if I'm not mistaken, he kind of dissuaded a fellow composer who was thinking about doing Tosca. He stole the idea from him, basically. He said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. No, nobody will come." You know. So, but Tosca is one of my favorites. I mean, if I were going to ask to be picked, the Desert Isle recordings, etc.
Desert Island discs,
yes, the Tosca with Maria Callas, to me, would probably be the one that I would want to be on a desert isle with and listen to all the time.
The one with Leontine Price and Cheryl Mills is also really good, but those two are probably
good. So you tell me, in terms of I've got the headshots that we're going to show of the
singers,
leading artists, etc. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about I assume that this was already picked before you got here, which usually they do it 2 or 3 seasons ahead of time. So is there anything about this that you've already had your handprint on, or anything that you've done with this?
This first show has been so beautifully prepared and had kind of the cast of dreams. I have just left it alone because it is beautiful. I guess the hand that I had in it was really about this whole night in Italy that we're doing afterwards. I feel that, you know, people who haven't experienced opera before sometimes think about it the way maybe perhaps previous generations did, in terms of kind of eating their vegetables. Like to be a cultured person, you have to go to the opera. And that's not how I looked at it at all. I go to the opera and have always gone to the opera because I enjoy it. And this kind of complete experience, as you were just talking about, in terms of music and theater, and ballet and art and all of these things that come together, a bit like film, is overwhelming. But for me, I was kind of like, well, let's just, you know, we're in Rome for the evening. Why not just stay in Rome? And let's really celebrate the fact that this is kind of a new direction for the opera, that there's kind of, you know, a new leader, and let's kind of create a whole fountain piazza vibe. We have this beautiful Norman trigal fountain outside the Mahalia Jackson. So I said, let's just keep everyone in Italy. Let's kick off the season with a real Italian party, and everyone can kind of have a good time under the stars, you know? So that's what we're doing for opening night, which is a change for us. So I'm really excited to kind of be able to welcome people to that. And then later in the season, there are many more things that I've absolutely got my sticky paws onto, which I'm happy to share with you. But that was really my main contribution, if I'm honest, to Tosca.
All right. Christopher, I put up a little placard there just briefly. A Night in Italy. We're going to talk about that a little bit. You said you got the permission to use this shot of Roman holiday. So
this is the perfect Roman holiday night. If you didn't make it over to Roma for your summer vacation and holidays, you get to have Roman intrigue of 1800, and then you get to come out on to the piazza, which is literally what it's called at Armstrong Park. As having done media here for 30 years, I didn't realize that, in front of the Norman Treagle fountain, and have one of these. It is a espresso martini that we'll be serving to everyone, along with Angelo Brocato Italian ice, and an entire band and dancing out there under the stars after it. Basically, for those who may be theater lovers, but not necessarily opera enthusiasts, this is the perfect evening. Imagine an evening of a show that comes off like Les Mis or something along those lines. And then you have this Roman intrigue, and then you go out, you have your Italian ice, your espresso martinis, your bar, your dances, everything from traditional Italian music all the way up to Sinatra and Dean Martin. You're dancing under the stars as if it were the Piazza Navona. It is the perfect night, and I'm drinking to it right now, as your guests often do on the show.
3 corns in the fountain. Okay, I brought a little port into the room, and Lila, what did you bring in today?
I did the same thing. I brought an espresso martini because I was just road testing for Friday.
Road testing.
So, you know, now that the
that's very
espresso
good of you.
martini has come
So
back into
let's
my
see.
life.
Let's see if we can do this, if it shows up correctly. There it is, the night in Italy, the Tosca and after party on the Piazza, the Mahalia Jackson Theater. That's going to be Friday the 27th, and again after the event, that's at the fountain. Everybody stick around around 10 o'clock after the after the deed is done, as it were, and everything. My opinion about opera that a lot of people have said is that the more people that die, the better the opera is at the end. And essentially, it's kind of true. I hate to say it, but Tosca does not end on a high note. Let's put it that way. Although,
well, I mean, it does end on a high note, literally.
high note, but not.
But yes, absolutely.
So there you
I mean, I used to have a business card when I first started as a librettist that said, opera, how many women have to die? And the answer is all of them. Of course, actually, Tosca is kind of an equal opportunity ending because everybody dies. It's kind of like the end of Hamlet.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a bloodbath, but a very apt and spicy and exciting one, kind of on the journey. So it's one of my favorites too.
And again, if you've not seen it, again, any form of opera before, it's very important to understand the marriage, if you will, of the word opera, meaning voice, right? Essentially, like an aria, and essentially the marriage of the music, the symphony. We are very blessed in New Orleans. And again, we are under a new artistic directorship there as well with Matthew Kramer, who was on my show a couple of weeks back. And we talked a little bit about them. The Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra is just a perfect partner for the New Orleans Opera. And
it's a gem. We're so fortunate to have them.
Can't talk enough about them, how good and how talented they are. They are really fantastic. And again, we're so blessed.
The thing that I like to say is that when they started inventing the talkies, they were really stealing the acting style from opera of the period, which was really the kind of popular entertainment of the period. And when you have kind of in the period where many German and Austrian composers were fleeing Nazi Germany, you also had them bringing this kind of operatic writing style into the cinema of the period in Hollywood. So when people, if you listen to some kind of 30s, 40s, 50s film scoring for kind of film noir and all those kind of pieces, you think of Casablanca, then what you hear is something that sounds like Puccini, because those Hollywood composers were imitating Puccini. He was the kind of OG who was setting drama to music and creating this whole sense of atmosphere, this whole world with the symphony, telling you what the characters were really thinking. And that's, as a theatre maker, that's one of the things that is really incredible, that is different, I would say, from straight theatre, is that you have the opportunity in opera that you can have your character singing one thing, and you can, and as long as you are in lockstep with your composer's perspective on what is happening dramatically, then the orchestra can be telling you exactly what they really think. You don't have to do the breakout Shakespeare soliloquy aside. The orchestra tells you the truth, and the character can crack on with what they're doing. So it's really layered in that way. There's always something to be understanding about the drama, which is really cool.
Well, I want to also, you mentioned a musical theater. Everybody knows Andrew Lloyd Webber, but if you go back to a Puccini piece called La Fanciulla del West and listen to the love duet there, you're going to hear something very, very similar to what Andrew Lloyd Webber stole, essentially.
Absolutely.
And so Puccini was the master, and everybody loves to steal from him if they can get away with it. Not everybody does, but Christoper, again, the first opera coming up is the 27th, and I believe it repeats on Sunday at 2:00.
Yeah, at 2:30, and
2:30,
of course we have. But it's good to get there early, and the reason is we have a little mini museum of Tosca through the centuries here in New Orleans, and in the history of Tosca going back to Sarah Bernhardt. And you can have a cocktail, look at them in a museum, hear our nuts and bolts lecture, get there a little early. But it premieres at 2:30 for those that aren't night owls, and that'll be our matinee follow-up performance on Sunday. So this Friday for the premiere, with the party after, and Sunday for those who want to see it in daylight hours.
And I will say this, I'm an elder millennial, so I love a photo op. So we've also done something really fun, and we've pulled and put together a Shayna from the opera, and we're putting it up at the front of the house so that people can like try out being the Baron Scarpia with his knife, you know, and that, like, so we're doing a whole, like, you can get there and you can have your photo op and you can try out being the diva and you can try out being the baddie. And, you know, I love those opportunities. I think they're really fun. So we're doing that as well. So there's loads to do before the show. So I definitely get there early.
So let's get into the cast of characters, as it were. For those of you unfamiliar, Tosca's about Floria Tosca, of course, an opera singer. I think Puccini probably chose that character well. And you're going to have Melody Moore performing in the role of Tosca. Can you tell me a little bit about her background? And perhaps, I know you weren't on when the contract was signed, but in other words, a little bit about her background. Do we know where she's from, et cetera?
Yes. Well, Melody has actually been with the company before, but a while ago, like 20 years ago, when we weren't in the Mahalia Jackson Theatre. So this will be a sort of theatre premiere for us, if not a New Orleans premiere for us. But she's been really excited to return to the city. She's sung Tosca all over the world. And she's been doing Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which is a really contemporary opera. She's just, I think, wrapped a recording of that, which is really interesting. And she was just recently at LA Opera in their Aida, I believe. So she's singing nationally. She's returning to us, but kind of doing something new. And her Tosca is really deeply thought out, deeply embodied. This is a character that she knows really well, and she has a lot to bring to it because of all the different interpretations she's had the opportunity to do. So it's vocally just a really sublime performance. It's just it's a fabulous instrument. And then we have Reggie Smith is opposite her, the Baron Scarpia, who for my money, is definitely the best baddie in opera. And he recently did his Scarpia at Santa Fe Opera. He jumped in the lead role in Champion recently at Chicago Lyric Opera. He's a fabulous singing actor. So the voice is fabulous, but, you know, you really believe him on stage. So I think he's going to be a very compelling, very frightening chief of police with lust in his heart. So it's going to be really great. And then we have Dominic Chenis, who's our Cavaradossi, who is the tenor, the pining tenor with political aspirations, who kind of creates all the trouble in some ways for himself and his lover. And it's just, oh my gosh, you know, that Oluchi van la Stele, that tenor aria that he sings when he knows that he's probably going to be executed is just
of course. But Visa de Arte is I think, you know, the one that captures me, the one that maybe the tenors can't sing.
No, and I think, you know, that aria is justly famous because I think it summarizes what many art lovers feel. You know, that if they boil their life down, that they've lived for their art making and they've lived for the love that they have for the people in their lives. And those two things are really the fulcrum of the central character, Tosca. So I think that aria is justly famous and has become really the kind of cornerstone of a lot of the great divas. What I love really is that when Puccini and his librettists chose this text, this story, the original play upon which the opera is based is, oh my gosh, I will admit, I have not read it, but it's 5 or 6 acts, I think, and the diva is a soprano even in the play. So that is kind of built into the DNA of the story. That kind of like diva character type has been there since day one. And Sarah Bernhardt actually originated the role of Tosca in the play by Sardou. So it's kind of the evolution of it as a story on stage, from theater to opera, and it's been filmed 6 or 7 times, I think, for Hollywood, is fascinating. It's just clearly a story that continues to resonate across forms.
Well, again, Tosca's the opening salvo, if you will, for the season. You know, we go from Tosca until November. And again, you have New Orleans is a very unusual city because you have your operas that are presented around uh, Mardi Gras. You know, in other words, you've got your operas before Mardi Gras, and then you've got your operas after Mardi Gras. And I hope that one day, if you'll allow me to perhaps get you invited to one of the Mardi Gras balls, I'll have the opportunity to have you be a guest at one of the Mardi Gras balls. If you've ever had an opportunity to attend, I think you'd enjoy that. So,
I'm
let me
sure I
know.
would, and I would be delighted to attend with you. The carnival season is
Well,
something I'm really looking forward to. I've never
again, you wouldn't
participated.
necessarily be my guest; you'd be the guest of the crew, and they would perhaps even have you appear before the royalty for their court.
Oh,
So
crumbs.
it would be a very interesting aspect for you. Again, getting into it though, we have a really special anniversary of sorts to celebrate in November. And
Yes.
as you had alluded earlier, Christopher, New Orleans was the center of opera in the United States for the premiere of a number of operas, French operas, probably most notable because of the French population that was down here. But I guess you have done your research and you know that the Samson and Delilah, Samson et Dalila, was actually premiered in New Orleans. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but you probably have that. But nevertheless, yeah, go ahead.
No, it was, we're celebrating the 130th anniversary, coming on to 131 years after it was premiered. But it is a good example of more than a dozen of the most famed operas of all time that were premiered here in New Orleans, mostly at the French Opera House, since this was the place that people came for popular entertainment in opera. And we very much proud to have, and this has been Lila's baby, a fantastic rendition, a concert rendition of Samson Delilah coming out in the beginning of November. We're very excited about it. Lila can tell you more about the staging, but it is something rather remarkable with a remarkable lead star.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Lila.
Well, no, I mean, just to say that Samson and Delilah, the opera, it is really, I mean, I was actually kind of delighted when I discovered that we were doing it in concert with the Phil, because the original work is basically started life as an oratorio, which is basically when you do an opera without staging anyway. So it makes so much sense to allow people to really focus on the music and the singing. We had most of our cast set, but we were very fortunate that the Metropolitan Opera changed their season at quite short notice. And I happened to find out that Rayanne Bryce Davis, the famous mezzo-soprano, who's kind of really the great dramatic mezzo of the moment, had become available. And so I was able to secure her to come down to make her not only her house debut for us, but her role debut as Dalila, which is a tremendous coup for us to have secured her to come down. She's really one of the world's most exciting opera stars. She's incredibly creative. She's also a film producer. She's won awards for her filmmaking as well as for her opera singing. She sings all over Europe as well as in the US. And it's just a tremendously vital talent. It's a rich and beautiful and really a voice that sounds like it's kind of come out of the golden age, but an entirely contemporary spirit. So she's a really appropriate star for us to come down and have. And I think she's really relishing the opportunity to sing Dalila, because she mostly sings these big dramatic mezzos tend to sing baddies, and not get to be very sensual or warm. And so Dalila being this kind of romantic and sensuous character, I think is going to be really exciting for us and for her as an artist. So I'm always excited to give artists the opportunity to sing something that's very appropriate for them vocally, but perhaps a step forward in their own creative evolution. So,
and that will be November the 8th and the 10th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
She will also be coming down for a very special concert outside in the Garden District. Part of my agenda is to pop up in different areas of the city and open kind of access to our home, which is our office, which is in the Garden District. So she will be actually coming down in the middle of October, October 22nd, to offer a recital of some of the works that have been written just for her, as well as some works that have really been sent to her life. It's sort of a concert as biography, and it's a really beautifully curated piece. So that will be, we're craning in a grand piano outside in the garden and having her sing there. So that's going to be a really exciting concert. So if you're curious to get to know her better before you come to Samson, there is that opportunity that will be available. So we're really, really thrilled about that.
Count me in. I want to definitely be there for that. Christoper, I know that there's some other things that are in the offing that you might not be able to talk about right now, but that we do have other things that are going to be going on in the season, and we should tell people to be very, very curious and also to be expectant that there'll be some other announcements for the season. That the first two items that we've mentioned just now, Tosca and the Samson Dalila, will be just the beginning of what will be coming this year.
Well, when you bring a talent like Lila Palmer into a place like New Orleans, you're going to expect to have some fantastic surprises on the creative front. And we've got something that's coming together, hopefully in December, that we'll be announcing hopefully soon. But you're going to see what Lila's talked about is a series of concerts, there are as many as half a dozen over the next year and a half, that will allow people to have access to opera and access to this music with a little bit of camaraderie and maybe a few cocktails in gardens and places in and around New Orleans, and hopefully quite a lot at the wonderful Opera Guild House in the Garden District, which has been a fantastic donation made by the Seabolts in 1966. And we're trying to power for the public. So many people have passed here, never been inside, and they'll have the opportunities to enjoy the house and enjoy the wonderful music that Lila is bringing to the city.
Well, we've got only a few minutes remaining. Maybe, Lila, it would be an opportunity for you to give me a little bit and the audience a little bit of an idea about some of the things that you're hoping to bring that we haven't talked about already. I mean, this is a town, believe it or not. Obviously, we do a lot of expressions for the French opera, but we have had some very successful mountings of German opera here, especially Wagner. I don't know whether or not that's on the offing, but are there any things that you're planning to do besides the Ghost of Versailles coming up?
Well, the Ghost of Versailles is going to be a really big lift, but that really is something that is absolutely on my to-do list. So please come and email my office, email me, talk to me if you would like to see Ghost of Versailles in the city, because that is definitely a goal. For me, opera is drama. Opera is always drama. And I'm not what I call a canary fancier, which is to say that I love beautiful voices, but the beautiful voice has to be in service of telling the story. When I came here, as I researched the history of the opera in the city and of this specific iteration of the company in particular, I discovered that really there were kind of three main areas that I saw very clear opportunity. One was that this company actually founded the very first young artist program in the country, which has historically been claimed by Santa Fe in 1957, but in fact we had one in 1956 called the Experimental Opera Theatre. So I'm very interested in talent development. That's in my background. And the particular nexus of the type of musical talent that we have in this city really give us the opportunity to create an engine to feed the national and international talent pool for new opera and music drama. So that's a real priority for me, and I will be seeking support for that. My own background, obviously, I've written shows, as I did just last month, that are kind of more traditional in terms of their structure, although innovative, hopefully, in their storytelling. But I'm very interested in new expressions. I've done everything from create and write and produce a promenade opera in a square mile in London, in the medieval city, to partner with the British Army to produce an opera. So I'm very interested. We were the first company to partner with the Army in the UK. So I'm very interested in innovation in the opera space, in activating new spaces, in creating new partnerships, and in kind of exploring the edge of what opera is able to do in terms of partnerships and technology. So that's an area of focus for me. And then the kind of third piece of that triangle really is to connect with who we have been as a city for opera in the US and towards the continent. So kind of reconnecting with that past of being the gateway of the new for opera in the US. You know, I'm thinking of potentially a series, you know, that says is something like First in New Orleans, which connects us with all of the works that were performed here that I think we need to see again. Many of the pieces that premiered here that are regularly in performance elsewhere have not been seen here in many decades, if ever. So that's a real priority for me as well.
Or even those that were second, like after San Francisco with our production that we did of A Streetcar Named Desire, Andre Previn.
Exactly.
So again, Lila, welcome to New Orleans. Welcome. Thank you, Christopher. We want everybody to go out to Tosca. Don't forget the night in Italy that we mentioned earlier. We want everybody to have an opportunity to get there as well. And again, I appreciate you all, you know, at the last minute being able to do that. So get your tickets now, neworleansopera.org. We mentioned, you know, you can get everything you want there. And I'm going to say goodnight to everybody right now. I'm going to ask you guys to stick around for just a second while I do that. And again, this is Alan Smason wishing you and all of your people out there that, you know, have a wonderful time. I hope that we get a chance to see each other again very soon. And I'll see you at the theater.